Hey guys, welcome to Code Decode. In this video, we are going to look into some Java 17 new features interview questions. Now, even though it was released in September 2021, why is this question recently asked in 2025? The reason being, most of the enterprise level applications are now moving from Spring Boot version 2.x to Spring Boot version 3. And with this, the basic language, that is the bare minimum requirement for Java language version, is Java 17. So that's why most of the interviews will try to trick you, saying if you have migrated your application to Spring Boot 3.x, which Java language version you have used and what are its new features. So if you say, because you are comfortable with Java 8 and you say Java 8, they will understand that you have not migrated it by your own. If you have migrated, you would have known Java 17 is the bare minimum requirement for Spring Boot 3. So now let's get started and see what all new features were introduced with Java 17. And at the end of this video lecture, I'll give you a bonus myth, like what most of the people say, that this was introduced, but it was not. It was introduced in way back before Java 17. So stick with me till the end. Now let's get started and see what are the Java new language features introduced with Java 17. Also, the reference that I've taken is from OpenJDK, this features. So you can also go from here, but I'm going to explain each and every of them very specially. And I have bifurcated them with the language enhancement, the performance improvements, the security encapsulations, the deprecations and removals, and OS specific enhancements. And then we have discussed each and every of them in very much description. Now let's get started and see what language specific changes have come into picture. Hey guys, recently we have launched a course covering an end-to-end full stack application using Angular as front end and microservices and Spring Boot as the back end. Also, we have used Cloud to deploy this application, and we have used CI/CD, that is Jenkins and Argo CD, for continuous integration and continuous deployment. The technologies that we have used is REST, RESTful web services, Spring Boot and microservices for backend, Angular for front end. GitHub we have used for version control system. Also, to make the code unit testable, we have used JUnits. We have used Sonar for code quality checks. Also, for containerization, we have used Docker and Kubernetes. And to deploy this whole application, we have used AWS and multiple services from AWS. Also, we have used SQL as well as NoSQL, that is MongoDB and SQL. On AWS, since for the SQL we have RDS, we have used those services, and Jenkins and Argo CD for CI/CD pipeline. Also, this is an architecture of the application that we have created where the front end is Angular and the back end is microservices. We have used ALB load balancers, Ingress for routing and load balancing. And we have used SQL and MongoDB for SQL and NoSQL DB management with Eureka Server and all those microservices counterparts. Now, this is the CI/CD pipeline. This is the CI/CD flowchart for the application that we have created on local. So this is something, a flow when you create an application in local, push it to GitHub, create a Jenkins pipeline, and do the CI/CD using Jenkins and Argo CD. And at the end, deploy the whole code at AWS EKS. Complete description of this course is covered in a very separate video. The link for that video is also given in the description bar below. And also the link to purchase that course from Udemy is also in the description bar below. So please go and check the description for all these links. Now here we have the sealed classes into the picture. Now what are sealed classes? Sealed classes are nothing but the restrictions which are added on the class on who can extend or implement that. For example, I'll give you an example of a sealed class. Okay, so suppose you have a too much of theory. Let's get into the coding. Okay, so suppose you have a shape class and it has a way to calculate its area. Now, multiple shapes can have its area calculated. For example, triangle, square, circle. But if you create the shape class as a sealed class and you give the rule that only square and circle are permitted to calculate area using the shape class, then only and only square will be able to extend it. Now suppose, for example, in the shape, I remove this shape completely. Then what will happen? This shape was having square. This square was extending shape. The square is not allowed in the sealed hierarchy. What does this mean? Square is not allowed in the sealed hierarchy. Means in the shape, you have not added square here in the hierarchy. If you would have done that, then this error would not have been there. So sealed makes sure that your class provides the rule on who can extend or implement it. This is on the class. You can also do it on interfaces. So that's the beauty of sealed classes. The second very important language enhancement came into picture is with pattern matching. Yes, you might have seen this in the Java 23 features also with preview 3 or preview 2, but this is where it was the first preview added with JEP 406. Now, if you're thinking what is preview, what is incubators, what is JEP, so this everything was discussed in when we were discussing about new features in Java 23. We have also discussed that previews are the features which are almost finalized. Incubators are those features which is in very much testing phase and might be completely dumbed off if it is found of no use. Where JEP is Java JDK enhancement proposals. These comes with the numbers. That means it is just the enhancement number. That this enhancement 406 will involve the introduction of pattern matching in JDK as an enhancement or a new feature. So if you want to know more about in-depth how it goes through the complete life cycle, that was discussed in when we were discussing about Java 23 new features. Now pattern matching, what is pattern matching? So initially when you go with the traditional switch case, let's go to the code directly. Let's not go into much theory. We'll understand with the code comparison what it is all about. So initially whenever we had a switch case or we had a if-else condition, whenever you pass an object, you have to check, is this an integer or is this a string? So basically you have a lot of type checking, manually casting and checking. And then you can manually cast and test using instance of method. So initially we have to write loads of boilerplate code just for different type of data structure comparisons. But now with pattern matching, this becomes very easy. So now with JEP 406, Switch now supports all type of pattern matchings for all different types of objects. For example, if you are getting an object, you can directly in the switch case check, is this an integer, it's a double, it's the string, or it is an unknown type. And then you can print all those. So now you no more have the manual casting and it is much shorter, cleaner and safer code. But there is a limitations to this. The only limitations which are on these is that it works only on the reference type. It does not work on the primitive type. Also, you cannot use switch with the generic types like list or set. Also, since it is in preview feature, you must enable it with -- enable preview. Now, you must be thinking how to do it. So, this is also discussed in when we were discussing about Java 23 new features. And then when to use pattern matching? When you want more readable, concise code, you don't want to do any manual typecasting and type checking with instance of. And when you have the preventions from class cast exceptions, and when you do this, it will have the long-term future use also when this preview will be stabilized. The third important language specification enhancement was restore always strict floating point semantics. Too much of theory. Understand that initially before this enhancement, what happened? And then we will see how this enhancement increased the developing experience for us developers. So before, floating point operations were sometimes optimized by CPU or JVM for performance. And because of these optimizations, some CPUs who used 80-bit registers while some CPUs using 64 registers, leading to inconsistent behavior between these platforms. So few might result in true, few might result in false for such kind of code base. When you are trying to add some double and compare it like this, some might give you the different results based on the platform, whether it is using 64 bits or x86. Now, because of this unpredictable results across multiple systems, what JEP did is it enforced strict float point semantics. That is strict FP mode. Now this is by default. Initially it was not by default, but now it is made by default, which means that no hardware specified optimizations will be applied to floating point calculations. This means that resulting floating point will always be consistent across all the CPUs. So this is so beautiful way to make sure that you have consistent result across all the systems. And when should you use this? When you are having some very specific computational financial calculations where precise floating point calculations are critical across all your different platforms, computers, systems, then go for this. This was first, that was language based enhancements. The second comes is performance or the memory improvements. Now, what improvements were done with Java 17 for performance and memories? So, Vector API, yes, you might have seen this in the incubator phase in Java 23 also, because it was not, or maybe in the finalized way in Java 23, but yes, we have seen Vector APIs in Java 23 also. Now, this Vector API was designed to perform single instruction multiple data operations. Too much of theory. Let's first understand how it was earlier, okay? So initially, when you have these four floating point numbers and you have to multiply all of these with 2, then what you would have done? You would have created an array 1, 2, 3, 4, then looped over it and multiplied it with 2.0f. So by multiplying it with vector 2.0f, you have to do so much of looping, that to 4 times. How it was made easier with vector now? Because vector introduced a single instruction multiple data. Now it allows you to multiply multiple values simultaneously. What does that mean? That means that now this is going to be your code. That is from the float vector. Now if you see in the float vector, this float vector comes from where? It comes from the incubator. That means this is still in an incubator phase. That means once you enable your incubator, how you can do that, I have already shared in the Java 23 video. So once you enable it, with the float vector, you can use from array. Means you can vectorize the version of your floating array. Then you can specify which register to be used. That means 128-bit register means you are going to process 4 floats at one time. So since you have the 4 floating numbers 1, 2, 3 and 4, this will read from 0th index and will multiply 1, 2, 3 and 4 simultaneously in one CPU instruction rather than separate instructions. So this is why with one single instruction you can multiply handle 4 vectors simultaneously, thereby it becoming the super fast and avoid loops and leverage the CPU vector registers. So it's much more faster than loops, it has better performance and it is portable as it can run on multiple different CPUs supporting SIMD. Now the fifth new feature or the second performance improvement done was with foreign function and memory API. This is also in the incubator phase. You will not get straight away. You have to find it here in the incubator directory only. Now what is this foreign function and memory API? Doesn't seem anything sensible to me. So let's understand what this API actually allows you to do. This API allows you to call the native functions. Like suppose you have a very legacy code. Okay. Initially, what you used to do to call that code from your Java code, you used to use JNI, Java Native Interface. Now you don't have to do that. Why? Because JNI was very much slower. Now with this foreign functions and memory APIs, it is much faster than JNI. It is simpler and safer. It does not lead to memory leaks and crashes, and it is better performance. So how older approach was and what was the problem? So you using the native memory using unsafe, which is very bad. You used to call C functions and used to read write memory directly, and this is so risky. Java does not allow you to read write memory directly. So now what it does is it lets the Java interact with the native code without using JNI. It also arranges your memory outside the heap. So if you know Java, what you know is all the code, all the memory lies in the heap area. But with this, you don't have to always go with the heap area. You can go something outside. That is, you can work off heap memory, which can improve your performance because you don't have to have the garbage collector in place for removing or getting the memories for your usage. It is even safer and easier rather than using the JNIs. So it increased the performance, increased your memory control you can have. Now this is a very simple code. see, this is again in the incubator directory. Now you would ask me, how would you allocate off heap memory? So this is how you do it. For the memory segments, you have to allocate a native memory and add it to the memory segment. And into that, write the value to the allocated memory, that is 4 bytes of an integer. Read it back from the memory, print it like this, and clean up after try with resource. Because we have used try with resource here. You would ask me, where is try with resource? A try with resource is nothing but a try block with a argument given like this. So since you have allocated memory in the tries parenthesis block, that means you will be easily able to access the memory, and you don't have to explicitly go and deallocate the memory. It will automatically cleaned up because you're using try with resources block. And that's the beauty of this JEP 412. That is foreign functions and memory API. This is how you use the memory API. If that is clear, let's move to the third memory enhancement, or the sixth feature, that is enhanced pseudo random number generators. You might have generated random numbers a lot, but now this is a new algorithm added for better security and flexibility. It is just a cherry on cake. So what it does is, this is the code, this is the new code that you will be able to see. Now since this is the permanent one, you will be able to run it directly. It will not be in the incubator or preview mode. So you can see you get the random generator directly here, and you will be able to run and generate also. So let's try running this. Okay, so we have a vector here, so I have to comment this up. And see, I have the random number generated as 35. I'll explain what this code do. This code, what is this L128X? I'll explain this, don't worry. So this random generator is a class which is used to generate the random numbers. Now this is using an algorithm. If you can see here, L128X256 mix random is an algorithm, which is an inbuilt algorithm given out of the box to you by Java 17. This is a high quality pseudo random number generator algorithm introduced as a part of this enhancement. Now it is a mix of several random generator techniques to produce a robust and well distributed numbers. And this allows you to give you a beautiful number which is ranging from 0 to 100. Since you have used next integer, and this is the limit where below which you want to get the number. So it's below 100, and that is why here you got a number which is from 0 to 100, that is 35 randomly generated. So this is a beautiful random generator given to you out of the box. Now there is a third category, security and encapsulation. So with Java 17, the security is much more enhanced. And how is it done? Because now with JEP 403, you have strong encapsulations for JDK internals. That means initially you can use MISC unsafe to access Java internal classes. Now it is completely removed. Let's first see what is strong encapsulation. What is encapsulation? It is a concept of restricting access to certain part of application or library to prevent this misuse. You might have used a class as an encapsulation. That means if you want to have anything access to the private, you have to first create an object of it and then access it. So that's the encapsulation. Here, encapsulation still remains the same, but it lies to this particular library, which is unsafe initially because you can directly manipulate into the internals and the pointers. To prevent that, now they have the strong encapsulations. That means you have less accessibility to these internals of JDK. So why was this change necessary? Because it was a security threat to JDK. There was less of maintainability because you were able to do whatever you want with these packages. And the consistency is also very much needed across multiple Java applications and systems. So what was now removed? The reflection APIs in Sun, MISC, unsafes are now restricted. You cannot use it. And if your application relies on this, you have to find some long-term stability and security for your application, and you can start using JDK Incubator Foreign. So this is an incubator phase yet, but you can go ahead with the new features where this foreign and the fourth point that we were thinking, right? The fifth one, the foreign functions and memory API. This allows you to call all the native functions internally and have the Java space outside heap. So this was the way you can replace your reflection API and unsafe MISC packages, and rather you can use those. Now, the second security feature that was introduced was they have deprecated the security manager for removal. What does that mean? The security manager was a class that was introduced in Java 1.0. Now it is deprecated and will be removed in the it is right now not removed, it is deprecated. You can still use it, but it will be removed in the future versions. So you make sure you create an epic, you create a story regarding this to migrate from security manager. So with Java 17, this deprecates the security managers. The security manager is an old mechanism to enforce security policy like the file communications, network communications in a security sensitive environment. But with this, it is no longer a modern and preferred approach. So if your application relies heavily on security manager, you need to start transitioning away from it, since it is now deprecated, but it will be removed in the future versions. So you need to find some alternative way. And what are those alternative ways? Alternative ways can be the access control list or OAuth to JWT or OIDC or OpenID Connect to be used for more fine-grained control over your security and service layer communications. You have other options also like container security, JPMS, that is Java Platform Module Systems, but the widely accepted ones are these two. The third very important enhancement done for the security wise is that if you can see, there's a vulnerability report that you can get into your project. Now that vulnerability is also linked highly with the deserialization and serialization process. So first, what is deserialization? The deserialization is process of converting byte into object and back. While doing this, it was so much open to the risk that attackers can easily exploit this insecure deserialization process. And any malicious actor can send crafted serialized data and can completely hamper your normal functionalities, or the data tampering can be done. So why was this change necessary? Because it will give you the proper security, prevention from malicious content. And how does it work? You define a filter, you apply a filter, and you have the conceptual rules. Too much of theory, let's see the code directly. So how do you leverage the custom deserialization filter into your code? Now deserialization is a place where you are going to write to a file or read from a file to an object. Now here we are going to read from an object. Okay. So this is the try with resource that you might have already seen, where you have object input stream, where you're going to get the data from file, and from that file you read into object input stream and you read into your object. And this is the deserialization process, where you read from a file and create the deserialized object. This was very risky. Now I don't want this, so I would need a filter over it. So this new method is introduced with Java 17, that is set object input filter. And what is this filter? This filter is nothing but an object input filter, which will allow you to create the filter which says only the strings can be deserialized, util objects will not be deserialized. So this is how you can create your custom filter like this. You can apply the custom filter like this, and then you can deserialize it. And how beautiful is this way that you are allowed only to deserialize the string object, while all the objects of the util packages will not be deserialized, and hence will be giving you a very much privilege to have the fine-grained control on your deserialization process. So if malicious object is detected, it will throw a security exceptions. And that is why it mitigates the security risk. You gain a fine control over security and reduces the attack services. So beautiful, right? So this was the three security enhancements came into picture. Now there are few deprecations and removals of the feature also. Not just any JDK enhancement comes with only the new features, but it also removes the old features. Few deprecations we have seen. Now these are the complete removals. Now removal of RMI activation system. What is RMI? RMI is remote method invocation. What is remote method invocation? Activation system. When an object is needed, the system would load on the runtime into the memory from the disk, making the object accessible. That is activation. And why was it used? In the distributed computing, this was on-demand object availability rather than keeping the object all time in the memory and utilizing your memory, which is a very costly stuff. So this was a beautiful system we had initially, but now it is figured out that RMI is no more used. It is obsolete technology. It has better technologies available like gRPC and REST APIs. So for that reason, now this is going to be deprecated. And if you are working on such an application which relies heavily on RMI, you are advised to move from the RMIs to gRPCs and REST APIs or the Apache Kafka. So now no more support will be there for automatic activations. If you're using it is deprecated and removed. Now, if you're going to consider the migration, so suppose if you're going to take a story that you need to migrate it, then you need to replace it completely with an alternative solution like gRPC, REST APIs, messaging queues, or the Spring Cloud for distributed system. The second important removal done is deprecation of applet APIs. Truly speaking, most of the people mostly the freshers might not even know about what applet was. But trust me, applets were a very beautiful programs extensively used decades back. These were the applets were the applications hosted on servers and could interact with the client-side interface through the browsers. For example, this was an applet which can paint and draw a string hello world at 20-20 of coordinates on the UI. But now, as the time goes, our technologies also gets deprecated. So now applet is completely deprecated. The applets that were very much popular in 90s and early 2000s for creating very beautiful web applications are now deprecated. Sadly, the people like me feel sad because we had a very good connect with applets. But now, with the modern web development, the people moves, the technology moves. So JavaScript, HTML, CSS have now completely replaced our applets. The browsers also no longer supports these applet-based applications because of security risk and the lack of cross-browser compatibility. So now the major of the browsers do support the new tech stacks like JavaScript, HTML, CSS, TypeScripts, Angulars, Reactives. You can use all those things, which internally also converts to JavaScript internally. But now the applet is going to be completely removed. But the impact of JEP is not that hazardous. If you have a very long back application, this is just the deprecation of applet. It doesn't mean it will be completely removed, but it will be going to the future releases. So make sure to take a story to migrate from your applet to the newer tech stacks. Now, what are the alternatives to applets? JavaScript, WebAssembly, JavaFX, and HTML, CSS. This is being the most one because it is widely supported across modern browsers. Now, what is the third deprecation done? That was the removal of experimental AOT and GIT compilers. Now, this was an experimental AOT and GIT. The standard GIT still remains into the picture. Do not get confused with the GIT compilers that is going to be completely removed. That is not. Only the experimental feature of GIT will be removed. Now, first understand what is GIT. GIT was just a compilation technique which converts bytecode into the native code at runtime. The JVM interprets the bytecode and based on the profiling optimizations, uses the JIT to improve the execution performance. What was AOT? Now, since JIT was a bit more slow because it converts the bytecodes to native code at runtime, AOT was ahead of time compilation. That means rather than waiting for JIT or waiting for runtime compilations, it do it at the compile time, thereby increasing the performances. And hence, to optimize the Java applications, AOT compilations were coming into picture more and more for the serverless and microservice architecture. Now, together with AOT and JIT, its benefit was the faster startup time and good performance. If it is so good, why is it going to be removed now? Reason being, it was never widely accepted in the production environments. Despite being the experimental feature, they were introduced with the experimentation that they would gain tractions. That means more of the developer will try to use it, but it was not adopted by the Java community or the developers like us. So it basically failed to gain the attention of us developers. Also, it was in too much of experimental phase, so we didn't explore it much. But with newer technologies like GraalVM, this was completely deprecated. It completely gained the market for us developers, and AOT and GIT compilation was completely removed. Also, it was said that GraalVM alone can give the better performance than AOT GIT compilation experimental feature. So if I can totally see GraalVM is a better success between developers, why would I go ahead with AOT and JIT? So what does that mean? If you might have used this code if you might have seen this in your code base, Java minus X share or Java minus use AOT, then you are in trouble. You have to search for the GraalVM options to completely use the native image generation feature and remove the experimental feature that you might have been using. There is a no immediate impact, but again in future it is going to be deprecated. So use GraalVM as the alternative and completely remove this experimental AOT and JIT compiler from your code base. Apart from that, also the last important change and enhancement came was OS specific enhancements. So both the enhancements are related to macOS. Okay. Now this improves the Java compatibility with macOS. With macOS rendering pipelines JEP 382, what happened is now JEP 382 introduces a new graphic rendering pipeline for macOS. What does that mean? Too much of theory. That means it is going to replace OpenGL. That was an old pipeline with Applet's Metal API, which is the new API, which will enable the better performance. So this change aims to make Java application run faster and efficient on the Apple-based silicon chips, like for example M2 and M1 and M2 chips. So this is just to increase the performance of Java applications and integrate better and seamlessly with the Apple products. This is the way you can enable the Metal APIs. The very last one is macOS in AR64 port support. Previously, Java was only officially supported on Intel processors. So if you have Mac, you know that there are two processors, Intel and the Mac's M1 and M2 chips. But initially, Java was only officially supported at Intel processors. However, now Apple has transitioned its custom Apple processors such as M1, which are based on AR64 architectures. This transaction significantly shift for both Apple users and developers. So with Java 17, 391 enhancement introduces the official port, meaning that Java can now run on Apple silicon devices like M1 and M2 chips without relying on Rosetta. Now, what was Rosetta? This was Apple's translation layer for running Intel-based app on M1, M2 ARM-based Macs. How does it help? It increases the faster performance and increases the integrity with the macOS. So that was just two simple enhancements done for better integrations with Java for the macOS. Now for the summarization part, why would you upgrade to Java 17? For better performance, more security, long-term support, and very important thing, because Spring Boot 3 reads at least Java 17. Now, as promised, there was a bonus question at the end. When we were taking interviews, we found that whenever we asked what is a new feature in Java 17, most of the people comes up with records were introduced. Make sure record was introduced in Java 14 and by the Java 16 it was finalized and added as a final stable feature in JDK. In Java 17, for obvious reasons, it will be there, but it was not introduced as a new feature in Java 17. So if you say records were introduced with Java 17, we would know that you have not thoroughly understood what Java 17 was all about. If you want to know more about Java 21 and these features, let me know in the comment section. I'll create the videos on all those things that you will ask me in the comment section. Thank you.